So we're going to move over. We've got a long way to travel, but we're traveling faster than even the speed of light. We're going to go over the Pacific to California, over the continental USA, over the Atlantic, overhead, over me, over London, and to Holland. And we're going to go to Srimati Nandini Didi, who's actually had the great boon to be born a devotee. And she took Harinam and Diksha in 2004 and 2009, respectively. I thought that was Nandini, but it was Ramanandan. That was a bit of a shock, Ramanandan. So a very warm welcome, Nandini. I know it's a little bit late there. It's gone 10 o'clock. Sorry, we're running behind time. Howdy, Bol. I think I met you in Brighton when Srila Bharti Maharaj was. That was you, right?
No, I think we met at some other programs, but not this one.
Definitely met you. So, well, very warm welcome. Thank you for staying up late, and please, the devotees are going to relish your katha. Thank you so much. Haribol.
Haribol. So, Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhishya Kripasinu Bhayavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So first of all, I would like to start by offering my unlimited obeisances to my Gurudeva, Nichalila Prista Om Vishnupad, Ashtotara Sata Shishimat Bhaktivedanta Narayana Gosvami Maharaj. Second of all, to Marupanuga Guru Varga, to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis in the past, present, and future, to all my God brothers and God sisters, and the rest of the God family, of course, and everyone watching. So first of all, I would like to start by thanking you for the invite and giving me the opportunity to speak. So I also heard if Ramananda asks you to speak, you can refuse. So here I am. And he specifically asked me to speak about how I met Srila Gurudeva. So that is what I will do. And I met Srila Gurudeva for the first time in 1997 when he came to Holland. My mother, a devotee, heard at that time that a very big sannyasi came from India and that it was very auspicious to go and meet him. So she decided to keep me from school that day and took me to go see him. Actually, I don't really remember a lot about meeting Gurudeva at that time because I was very young and I was just playing outside with the other kids. But what I do remember is that there were only a handful of people there. And I remember Gurudeva walking around. He was just chanting and watching us play. And he sometimes our ball would go towards him and he would just kick it back and just smile at us. So this would be my very first memory of Srila Gurudeva. And the year after, there was a devotee living in our street, Bhakta Swarup Prabhu. He just lived a few meters from where we lived. And one morning I was going to school. I was still in primary school at that time. And as I got out of the door and walked down the street on my way to school, I saw that there was a sannyasi waiting, standing on the pavement. It was actually a small street with a one-way street for cars to pass. And Gurudeva was standing on one side and I was standing on the other side. And so I saw this sannyasi. I didn't know who he was, but I recognized it was a sannyasi because he was having tilak and he was dressed like a sannyasi, and he had a japamala. So I stopped to look at him across from the street, and Gurudeva stood there actually all by himself. I suppose he was just going somewhere for a morning program, and there wasn't any other devotees. So he was just standing there and he was looking at me and I was just looking at him. And I remember very clearly his glance, these piercing blue eyes that I was looking into. And yeah, we stood there just looking at each other for what felt to me for like a very long time. And finally I remembered I had to go to school or else I was going to be late, so I turned around and I ran off. That afternoon when I came home from school, I told my mother that I saw a sannyasi in our street. And my mother immediately knew who this was. And she said, "Oh my God, do you know who this is? This is Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj. You met him? You met him on the street? Did you go? Did you go and do dhanavats? Did you touch his feet? Did you pay your respects and your obeisances?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And she asked me what I did, and I told her I just stared at him. And my mother got so angry with me that day. She got so angry. She chastised me and lectured me for hours on the importance of paying proper obeisances to senior devotees and sannyasis or Vaishnavas. And that you know, and I was really just a bit shocked by this heavy chastisement from her, because yeah, because she wasn't really like that. So but I never forgot it, the way that how upset she got with me. And after I started following Gurudeva after 2004. My mother would be there for a darshan. We would have a Gurudeva, and we would pay our obeisances. My mother would always give me a little nudge and would say, she would joke like, "Do you remember that when you didn't pay obeisances when you met him on the street, and here you are like falling on your knees every chance you get." So this was a bit of a private joke I had with her. So in 2004, I started coming to the temple programs that were in Rotterdam at the time, and I also went to my first festival with Gurudeva in Italy, being more aware of who he actually was. And I just remember that this festival was just so special, how everyone was just waiting so anxiously and excitedly, really happy to meet Gurudeva. And I remember that right before Gurudeva came, I could actually feel the energy change. And a few minutes later, somebody called and said, "Oh, Gurudeva is coming," and everyone just dropped what they were doing and just rushed outside to go and see Gurudeva. And everyone was just chanting and singing. And then Gurudeva got out of the car, and it was just such a wonderful moment. What I also remember about this festival was that every wish I had to do seva somehow was granted. I always liked to make flower garlands, and I really wanted to make some flower garlands for Gurudeva. And by some miracle, I ended up making his flower garlands every time before he would give class. And somebody instructed me on how to not make them very heavy, because it would be heavy for his neck. And in the afternoon, I would take a basket and I would go outside and pick flowers, because they had wonderful, beautiful flowers in this area. And at one point, they made an announcement that people should stop stealing flowers from other people's gardens. So I just I didn't really realize that I was stealing flowers, because I was so happy to do this seva. And also in that time, I also started feeling some pressure on how to take Harinam and Diksha, because everyone was always asking me and encouraging me, but very sweetly also. But sometimes it felt like a bit much when everyone was doing that. And since I was raised that you had to follow certain rules to be able to qualify to take Harinam, I really felt like I wasn't ready. And one time I was talking to a devotee about this, and she said that Gurudeva said that if you don't have initiation, then you're an animal. And at that time, I was a teenager, and I got really upset with this. I really thought like, oh, am I an animal? And I was just really upset for days. And finally, I remembered that Gurudeva said in a class that if we ever have any doubts or we have some questions, we should come to him and open our hearts, and that he would help us. So I decided to do that, and I asked Brajana Prabhu if there was time for me to ask a question. So I went to Shri Gurudeva and I asked him if I was an animal, and so Brajana Prabhu asked me to elaborate a little bit on this, which I did. And then the first thing Gurudeva said to me was that it made him very sad when devotees use his words out of context, because this was not what he meant at all. And then he started explaining that when you follow the 4 principles, then you are not an animal. And then he looked at me and smiled very sweetly and said, but I know you follow the 4 principles, so therefore you're not an animal. And I just felt like such a relief that I wasn't. And then I asked him about taking Harinam, and I told him that I didn't feel ready. And I felt a little bit that I felt quite pressured by it. So Shri Gurudeva then said, well, when will you ever be ready in this life, really? And he started explaining about internal and external initiation. And then also saying that internal was the most important. And again, he looked at me and said, but I know you've already internally accepted me as your Gurudeva. So when you're ready, you can come to me and I will give you external initiation and take you to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. And especially the last part was really important to me, because it really made me feel like Srila Gurudeva could read my mind or really know what I was feeling, because I was struggling with this a little bit at that time. So, and then 5 years later, actually, it took me 5 years to actually get the formal initiation. And at that time, I honestly thought that I had any say in this, but I came to realize that I'm not the controller, and everything was already arranged. Probably also when Gurudeva, well, for sure, when Gurudeva saw me in the street, and as a child, he already knew that I would grow up, and he would be so kind to accept me as his disciple. And it was also a funny story that made me realize that I wasn't the controller at all in this situation, even though I thought I was. We were at a festival, and every morning Gurudeva would go on a morning walk, and all the girls would wait in front of his door when he came back, and we would sing for him. So one day Gurudeva came back from his morning walk, and then he walked right up to me and he said, "Where's your kantimala?" So I was wearing a jacket or a sweater that was zipped up till here, so you couldn't really see my neck. So I said, "Oh, it's right here, Gurudeva." And then he said, "No, your kantimala, it's not right. You should wear it just like me." And at that time, I was having a kantimala with very nice beads, and I would also sometimes make sure it would match my clothes, and I was really attached to it. So Brajana Prabhu went into the house, got me a new kantimala, and gave it to me. And I remember that everyone, and me especially, was just so shocked on how he knew, because you couldn't see the kantimala at all. And I honestly thought that he had some X-ray vision, and I especially like comics, so I thought he was like Superman, like he could see through the through the sweater. And everyone who was there was just amazed by it, that he knew. And later, when I was on Parkram in Kartik, my mala got stolen while I was taking a bath in Radhakund. And I was really upset by this. I I had this mala ever since I was very young, and I was apparently very attached to it. And I was just crying for days, and I was really, really upset. And finally, a devotee said that I should go to Gurudeva and ask him for a new japa mala. But then another devotee said, no, you shouldn't go to Gurudeva, because Gurudeva gets very upset when you lose your japa mala. He will not be pleased with you at all. So I really didn't know what to do, and I just continued to be very sad about this. So one day after class, I was crying because I was so sad that I lost my mala, and Srila Gurudeva was passing by, and he asked Brajanath Prabhu why I was crying. So Brajanath asked me, and Brajanath Prabhu asked me, and I explained to him that that my mala got stolen and that I was very sad about it. And Gurudeva then looked at me and said, okay, I'll give you a new one. So Brajanath Prabhu went in the house and got me a new japa mala and gave it to me. So in this way, I could really see now that I actually got all the external things that you get when you actually take initiation. You get your kanti mala, you get your japa mala, and Gurudeva gave them all. He arranged that I would have them all, and eventually I was ready to take a formal initiation, which I did. And so in preparation for today, I was thinking about a lot of classes, how there's being spoken about how Gurudeva is closer to you than the air that you breathe. And for me, sometimes this is very frustrating because I don't realize this at all. And so I was trying to meditate on how we can experience Srila Gurudeva's presence even now. And foremost is through his nearest and dearest disciples, because if you're within their association, it just really feels like Srila Gurudeva is just right next to them. Because wherever they go, they carry Srila Gurudeva in their heart. So this will be possible also for us, but it really depends on us in which way we accept Srila Gurudeva in our life and how much space we give him in our heart, or whether that is a central place in our heart. And if I speak for myself, I tend to forget this because I get so absorbed in my own personal desires. So the most important thing truly is to have association with who have Gurudeva already in their heart. And this pandemic especially made me realize that how fortunate we are here in Holland to have so much sadhu sangha. I never really appreciated until now, when we're not having it physically, at least. So yeah, the way really to keep Srila Gurudeva close in our heart is to really be around those Vaishnavas, and really truly in their presence, we are constantly reminded of Srila Gurudeva's presence. We can actually feel that he is right there. And I think it's important for me then to sometimes go back to basics, to think about what it was that Gurudeva really wanted us to do. What did he do? What example did he give? And what we can do to make him happy. Because true Guru Seva is really to please Srila Gurudeva, to fulfill his desires. This is actually the most important task of a disciple. And we should really try to not forget this, to remind ourselves, to remind myself of this constantly and work towards this goal. And in this way, Srila Gurudeva will be present. We can actually feel and see that he is eternally present with us. So today, on that matter, today is also the disappearance day of Srila Bhakti-Rakshak Gosvami Maharaj. So Gurudeva really instructed everyone to give proper respects to our senior devotees and Vaishnavas, but especially on their disappearance and appearance day. So I would like to close off by reading 3 sentences from Shri Guru and His Grace, a book by Srila Gosvami Maharaj that I read today that I thought was really beautiful about Srila Gurudeva. So he says in the introduction that the guidance to perfect or absolute truth is necessarily a function of the Absolute himself, and the divine agent through whom this function manifests is Shri Guru, or the divine guide. His advent is the most auspicious and happy event to the suffering animation, and can be compared to the rising of a morning star that can guide the traveler lost in the desert. A gentle touch of Shri Guru's merciful hand can wipe off the incessant tears from all weeping eyes. I just, when I read that, I just thought that was extremely beautiful. So yes, I guess I'll stop, and I pray to you all that I may remember Srila Gurudeva and his instructions, also through the personal memories that everyone has been sharing so sweetly, and through his books, and that I one day may be able to understand and please him. So thank you again for having me. Thank you,
Nandini. That was just sublime. I feel like after Manjari and you, I'm sort of like floating on some kind of flower aeroplane somewhere. It's absolutely delightful. And Rasamrita Prabhu, thank you so much. We have lots of fishermen going out around the world finding wonderful flowers, and you brought a beautiful flower for the program. It was absolutely gorgeous. I love. Was it in 19? How old were you in 97 when you didn't pay your obeisances?
11. 11.
You were 11, yeah. Because it was kind of really interesting. What I took from that was that, of course, our goal is Manjari Bhav, and Gurudeva was teaching us a relationship with Bhagavan, where ultimately in the spiritual world we forget who the Lord is, and he forgets who we are in terms of that intrinsic tattvic relationship, and we move to a totally different Rasik relationship. And so in a sense, you started your relationship with Gurudeva in that way, because you not paying obeisances to him was symptomatic of you having no idea who he really was in that sense. It was very beautiful. Actually, that is the most amazing thing about Gurudeva. He had this gravity, and he's Sadguru, you know, it's like, whoa. But somehow, like I remember once for myself, I was on a volleyball pitch in Brighton playing volleyball, and the mobile phone goes, and I couldn't recognize the voice. It was like a little boy. And it was Gurudev calling from India, asking me to do something. And he was like a little boy. And immediately my heart was like, oh, I want to help this little boy. I want to help this helpless little boy. And yet he's my guru. It was like, you know, that's how Gurudev could manifest multiple relationships with us and just get us by the heart. So that was a beautiful start. And I loved how you said about stealing the flowers. You know who's a very expert flower stealer is Srimati Didi. She's famous around Walthamstow for stealing flowers on her morning walk. But I also loved your whole thing about, actually it was I learn a lot when I hear these, when I hear people, devotees sharing their hearts about their realizations. And you were talking about internal, external aspects of Diksha. And it's kind of really interesting because sometimes our internal mood towards Gurudev is stronger than what we can actually do on the outside. And then sometimes what we're doing on the outside isn't really matched on the inside. And there may be different areas, you know, different devotees have different mismatches. And even within ourselves, we have different areas of mismatch. But understanding that Gurudev has the patience to keep bringing us towards him and increasing that internal and external manifestation, and ultimately, hopefully, having them totally congruent in pure love and affection, it gives us a lot of faith. So thank you for reminding us of that. And you read from one of my favorite books, Shri Guru and His Grace, an amazing book. And actually, you touched on a principle inadvertently, which is that Guru is both Akhanda and Vyasti, one and different. So Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj used to describe himself as a backward-leaning gentleman. He was not so much about touring around the world and preaching, people went to him. He was much quieter in that sense. But you totally are nourished in your relationship with your guru, because we're brother and sister. We're nourished in our relationship with Gurudev through Bhakti Rakshak Maharaj. And this is such an important understanding, which brings me to a reminder to everyone that once we finish our 64th program, we're on 44 now, so 20 to go. So we'll finish around that's right, Charlotte, it's his disappearance day today, yeah, as Didi mentioned earlier. When we get to our 64th, which I think will be around, obviously, the appearance day of Srila Gurudev in next calendar year, we'll be continuing this program, but instead of calling it Gurudev Memories, we're going to call it Guru Memories, and we're going to open it up to all the 15 Mahabhagavats like we did with Guru Pranim, and we'll be inviting devotees from all the Sanghas to glorify these magnificent Vaishnavas. And not only that, will that be relishable for us and help us in our relationship with our Guru, but 100 years' time, devotees will be able to log on and hear this. Can you imagine us hearing how disciples of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur glorify him? That's what it's going to be like in 100, 150, 200 years. We'll have those glorifications available to devotees. Who knows? For those of us who are going to come back to this planet, we might actually benefit in a future life. Nandini, Didi, thank you so much.